Hey, moms and dads, it's Dr. Scott here. So before I leave today, I've had a number of different conversations today with moms and dads, and there's been these common themes that we've talked about in a number of different of the conversations that moms and dads are always wanting to know, why did my child go down this road? Why is my kid dealing with these neurodevelopmental challenges? What started all of this? And I'm going to spend just a few minutes here. I'm not going to belabor this because I know that many of you are probably looking for quick answers and you want to understand what's happening. But I'm going to give you some very, very, very specific details as to why so many kids are going down the road of neurodevelopmental challenges. And I'm going to tell you it starts here. So this is what happens to, on an annual basis, 33 to 50% of all the kids that come into this world. Even if this is not what happens to your child, moms and dads, kids are going through stress to their cervical spine. You see where that little baby is having their neck pulled. Even in a vaginal delivery, that is where they're being tractioned from. And imagine that in this scenario here, the amount of force that's going through that little baby's neck is anywhere between 40 and 60 pounds of axial traction at a minimum. And then to try and clear the baby's shoulders, they pull side to side to get the shoulders free. Now, in a vaginal delivery, even if they're not having to deal with the resistance of that mom's skin, they're still dealing with the baby being in a position that's not friendly to gravity assist, because most moms are laying on their back. And because of that, what that does, it makes it very difficult for the baby to be delivered without assistance. So the OB or the midwife has to put some traction into the baby's neck. And we know what happens. We know that the top part of the neck, the brainstem region, is going to be affected by this. Let's put concept to this. So all of our senses work together to feed our brain with information about what's happening around us. The one that refines and coordinates and helps all of the senses to come in correctly is the sense that's called our proprioceptive sense. That sense is really critical because it's extremely dense in our spinal column, and 33% of the nerve endings that lie in the spine from that one sense, they live right in the very top part of the neck, which is the area that you saw tractioned here in the slide. So think about that as input control. And so for a baby's nervous system to develop normally, input has to be normal. Baby has to have lots of proprioception, and if it doesn't, there are consequences to this. And so think about it like this. At that very early stage, that baby had a pretty significant subluxation that occurred to its little neck. Subluxation as a term has three major components. Most of you, when you think of chiropractic, may think of misalignment. And misalignment's important, not as important as the loss of motion, which is proprioception, perception of movement. If that little baby's neck is a byproduct of the birth process, gets subluxated, which is a misalignment along with loss of motion, then what it does is it triggers that baby's stress response. And if the baby's nervous system early and often is stuck in stress mode, then what we see is stress outputs and stress behaviors. Because subluxation creates a background noise of stress, which will then affect that baby's ability to have their body work and give information to the brain to keep it calm. Why this is really important is that this area at the top of the spine, when it moves the way that it should, does a great job of allowing all the sensory input to come in as it should, keeps the brain calm, and it manages the balance point between the stress response and the rest and digest response. Babies, when they're delivered, should be 95% of the time in rest and digest mode. When they are not in rest and digest mode, what happens is that their stress mode kicks in. And that should be something that's a very short-term thing. It should be something like, baby's hungry, baby then will cry and fuss until they're fed. And then when they're fed, right, they instantly want to take a nap and they go into rest mode, they go in digest mode, and soon after they're going to, pee their diaper, poop their diaper, they're going to get up, rinse and repeat. When stress mode kicks in, right, then there might be, instead of things working the way they should, real smoothly, baby's able to digest the way they should, then because of the effect on certain nerves, like a nerve called the vagus nerve that lives right at the top of the brainstem, if the vagus nerve can be affected, it can affect everything from the way that the baby's able to digest food to the way they're able to drain their ears. And this is really important because the vagus nerve is critical. But the vagus nerve, if you see here, the vagus nerve lives right there. And the vagus nerve trails down this green nerve, and it goes into the heart, to the lungs, stomach, small intestine, arteries of the abdomen, the liver, the pancreas, the adrenal glands, small intestine, large intestine, everything. It's a really, really critical organ. But here's the thing you have to remember is that nerve is not just an output nerve. It's input. And it has to have constant feedback from the spine to keep the nerve giving feedback to the brain so it knows exactly how to maintain the regulation of the heart, regulation of the lungs, regulation of the immune system. If something happens early on that disrupts the subluxation process, then it will disrupt the brain's ability to regulate all of our internal processes via the vagus nerve. That's why we see so many babies dealing with things like reflux and issues with ear drainage, and they're rigid and they're head banging, and difficulty with breastfeeding and latching and all of these things, because these are signs that that baby is having difficulty being able to move their neck, right? Because we talked about subluxation being misalignment with fixation. But then the output organ issues, things like reflux and things like constipation and things like ear drainage issues, these are side effects of imbalances in the way the brain's able to use the rest and digest system. It's an output problem as a result of an input problem. And so when we start looking at this, if the vagus nerve is not able to function the way that it should, we have to get it started again. And so moms and dads oftentimes will ask, well, what does an adjustment do? Well, the vagus nerve is stimulated every single time that we do the adjustment. And in doing so, it turns up areas of the brain that control the parasympathetic rest and digest system. And, keeping in mind that the single most important thing that we can do is getting that child's brain back into balance, because the longer that a subluxation lives there, the more that it's going to alter the balance between the rest and digest and the fight or flight systems. When a child's nervous system is stuck in fight or flight for long enough, then we start to see this escalation, right? This buildup of effects, right? And I know moms and dads, if you're seeing this, you probably had, your doctor tell you, well, they'll grow out of it. And what you're really seeing is more the evolution. They're growing into new things, right? When the colic goes away, right, then it's the temper tantrums, and it's the meltdowns, and it's the anxiety, and it's the anger, and it's the aggression, it's the focus and attention issues, or it's sensory processing challenges. But they're evolutions, because the longer the brain is living with improper input, the more we start seeing evolutions of improper output. And so, when you think about these processes of this nervous system building up momentum like this, understand these take time, and you watch them happen. And moms and dads, if you're watching this, you're probably sitting here thinking to yourself, I've wondered why my child is going through this. Well, moms and dads, in the vast majority of cases, when kids start going down the road of having the more significant neurodevelopmental challenges, that birth process that I showed you is what we see as the trigger, right? I mean, literally in my practice on a daily basis, 90% of the kids that come in have had some level of intervention, because that's the nationwide stats, right? 87% nationwide, per the Department of Health statistics, is the number of pregnancies that result with an intervention delivery. So it's the thing that's changed more than anything else has, right? Hygiene hasn't changed, toxicity hasn't changed, even vaccines haven't changed as much as the birth process has over the course of the last 30 years. In one generation, more than anything else, how babies come into the world has changed more than anything. And because of that, we see this escalating effect of kids' nervous systems being stuck in stress mode, affecting neurodevelopment, and it's building and it's building and it's building. So our kids are having one challenge after another after another. If you want to know why we see so many kids make remarkable changes, it's because every time that we do an adjustment, we change the way the brain perceives the world, and we turn the prefrontal cortex on, which in turn suppresses the stress response. And over time, their brain builds momentum and it starts to rebalance. And as the brain rebalances, it calms down, and we start seeing things like better digestion, better mood, better focus and attention, because these are the day-to-day stories that we see with the kids that come through our practice. I wanted to take a moment to share this with you because I know many of you have questions. If this is something that you have more questions about, feel free to ask me. You can send us messages at elitechiros.com. We have a section on there that you can send us messages, or you can reach us directly through Facebook Messenger, and we'll get back to you ASAP with any questions that you may have. But if there's questions, things that we can do to try and help, make sure to let us know, because our main goal for all of this is to make sure that you've got the resources and understanding so you know why our kids are going down this road, but more importantly, how we can step in front of this and how we can change the future for our kids. Because my wife and I were there once. Our little girl was struggling mightily because she had a very, very rough labor delivery process. And we struggled to find answers for a number of years. And, we were very thankful that we met a doctor who was able to help us to have the understanding of what was missing, what we weren't doing and what we didn't know, so that we could change things for her. And in turn, by doing so, we changed her quality of life, changed her path, changed her development. In turn, now she's a different little girl, happy, well emotionally regulated, no issues with constipation anymore, which she struggled with from the time she was born. And she's just happy and she's calm. And we thank God for her every day. So if we can help you in the same way, let us know. I'm Dr. Scott. God bless you guys. Be elite.